Hi, hello, thank you for being here. My name's Kara, and welcome to the video. As I'm filming this is the last day of August, which means that next month is Sally Rooney new novel publication month. Intermezzo is coming out very soon, and to sort of celebrate that, I wanted to read some books that Sally Rooney has recommended, referenced over the years. There's one article in particular where she spoke about some novels that influenced her, and I have two of them that I haven't read yet. One is Good Morning Midnight by Rhys. I have read White Sargasso Sea by Rhys, and I love that book so much. It's one of my all-time favorites. I bought this a couple months ago in Dublin, and I've been wanting to read it, so I'm really excited to finally give it a go. And the other one is Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger. I read Catcher in the Rye for the first time earlier this year. I never read it in high school. I think it's better that way. I think I would have hated it in high school, but I loved it now. And I also want to listen to the audiobook for the Communist Manifesto, which, I mean, she references it in pretty much all of her books, particularly in Normal People. And I'm pretty sure it'll probably come up in Intermezzo as well. So I'm gonna read those books over the next couple of weeks until the new novel comes out. Maybe she's inspired by these books. Finished reading Good Morning Midnight by Rhys. I was not as blown away by this as I was expecting, and I think that's a little bit on me because I loved White Sargasso Sea so much. Good Morning Midnight follows our main character Sophia, who I'm just reading the blurb to you now. She's living in Paris in the 1930s. She doesn't have a job, she doesn't have a lot of money. She's there because her friend from England has paid for her to be there. And she's processing a deep trauma and heartbreak that she suffered earlier in her life, and she's sort of coming to terms with it because the last time that she was in Paris, all of these things happened to her. Rhys's writing is amazing. She has a very tender but also urgent way to express the things that the main character finds important and pressing. It's a very hypnotic book, which is the thing that I also noticed in White Sargasso Sea. I read this book in a weird way. It's split into 4 parts, and each of the 4 parts I read like in one sitting, but I read them quite far apart from each other. Rhys does write in a stream of consciousness style, which I do enjoy a lot, but it is sometimes quite hard to follow, especially if she goes back and forth. And I think maybe that's also just part of my reading experience because I read it in chunks and didn't really have a lot of continuity. I find it really interesting because I don't read a lot of books where the main character is like sort of middle-aged. I think for that reason I really struggle to relate to her, which is not really a criticism as to why I would rate it lower or anything. It's very small in scale, and like she goes into a lot of detail about very small things that happen in her life, like wanting to go and get her hair dyed or leaving a job because it sucks. It's like small mundane catastrophes that sort of add up and then lead to someone having to confront something about themselves that they have sort of been keeping hidden. I mean, that part is relatable. I do think this is the type of book that you have to reread at different points in your life. If I read it in 5 or 10 years, I think I'll really love it more. I just don't think it's meant for me now. So another one of the books that Rooney talks about in this article is Emma. She actually talks about all of Jane Austen's work, but she particularly references Emma as being a favorite and one that she returns to a lot. I read Emma earlier this year. I really enjoyed it. If you don't know, Emma is about Emma Woodhouse, who is a beautiful, rich girl, and just the shenanigans that she gets up to trying to matchmake a bunch of people that she knows. It is fun. It's a really fun book. I think the parts that I don't like are the parts where there's nothing happening, there's no drama. I remember one chapter them just talking about the art of letter writing, and they lost me. I put the book down for a week when I read that chapter. I was like, I don't think this is for me. But I mean, Jane Austen is Jane Austen for a reason. The other one that I read was the Communist Manifesto. Well, I listened to the audiobook. One thing about me is I love on a Sunday to cook a long and complicated recipe while listening to an audiobook. So I listened to the Communist Manifesto, and like I'm really glad that I listened to the audiobook because it is, you know, it's quite dense. It's a political text and it's like philosophy. It is really interesting to see the parallels between now and then. I mean, it's just a seminal text anyway. I've read like loads of extracts of it, so was kind of just like seeing all of it together. There were lots of parts of it that were very, I want to say, time specific. Lots of things that of course like translate to the present day as well. One of my favorite quotes from the book, which is just like a general quote, but the history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggles, which I mean really summarizes a lot of what Sally Rooney writes about and what a lot of her characters are concerned with and what a lot of their conversations are about. Conversations with their friends, one might say. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, but like, do you enjoy a text of political philosophy? I'm glad that I have read it. And then the last one that I want to talk about is Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger. So I've read, it's 2 short stories, Franny and Zoe, and they're based on the 2 youngest members of the Glass family. So I've read Franny's story, and fucking banger. It's so good. Like, J.D. Salinger is so good at constructing a story and like making you understand characters, and the situations that he puts them in are so relatable. Franny is just someone having a breakdown over having to be a human. I loved it. I'm giving 5 stars to that story. So I'm gonna read Zoe and then we'll be back. So we've come to the end of the video and I've finished reading all the books that I said I would. I finished Franny and Zoe yesterday and I feel like I needed to sit with the Zoe story for a lot longer than Franny's story. Franny's story felt very like clear cut and it felt very intentional as a story and as a character study. Zoe felt a little bit more like a philosophical exploration on gifted kid burnout. The conversation that you have around religious trauma and how that can happen in a family, especially a large family with lots of different influences from many different authority figures, felt more of a philosophical exploration rather than a story, which I also appreciate. I definitely prefer reading philosophy in the form of a story. I think the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes does this really well, where she explores the state of nature debate in a story form. This particular one felt very philosophical So it's definitely something that I'd have to sit with a little bit longer, but the characters are really interesting. So I was intrigued by that. But it's kind of one of those books where it feels like real people don't speak like that. Salinger has this way of emphasizing words in their syllables when he's writing dialogue. And sometimes it felt like he's trying to sort of convince you that this is something that someone is saying based on how they are emphasizing the word in the sentence. So I wasn't always sure about if I liked that or not. I think Sally Rooney said that she read this book a lot as a teenager, which is concerning. So I mean, I'm reading this in my mid-20s now, and I found it, you know, it's difficult because it's written in the past. But Sally Rooney reading this multiple times as a teenager and relating to it and sort of already experiencing gifted kid burnout as a teenager, I think that kind of tracks. Also, since I started the video, there have been 2 new articles that came out about Sally Rooney. I'm sure there are more, but 2 in particular that I read. One of them was about her inspirations behind intermezzo, and there was just one part that I found quite funny, which was she was talking about one of the characters who is a chess player, and she's talked about her husband becoming very intrigued, involved in chess during the pandemic, and I just feel like we now know that they watched the Queen's Gambit at some point in the pandemic, which is very relatable. I love that for them. The other article, I'm actually not sure if it's an article or just a newsletter, but I am subscribed to the Intermezzo newsletter from Faber and Faber, as is my wont, and she had a whole list of books that she read and was inspired by for Intermezzo in particular, none of which are the ones that I read, but you know, it was interesting to do this anyway, and these are books that I've been wanting to read in any case. So it was just an interesting thing to see these other books. I don't know if I'm interested in any of those books, but maybe one day I'll read them. But that's everything for me for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with another video. Goodbye.